Hey everybody, Robot here. Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com here in San Diego, California. If you need parts for one of these, you know where to go, ScooterWest.com. So today is a different format of video. There's a YouTube channel I follow, because I'm just a big motorhead in general, called I Do Cars, and all he takes apart are broken engines. And I figure, let me do it with a Vespa. This motor is scrap, and throughout this teardown video, I'm going to tell you the story of this motor. It's a 2021 Vespa GTS 300 motor, the HPE variant, so it's got the higher output engine, some other small changes that I'll talk about as I'm taking it apart. First of all, this is not a how-to video like I normally do on how to rebuild one of these motors. You could check out the video I did a couple years ago on a complete teardown and rebuild of the Vespa GTS 300 motor. The HPE variation is only a little bit different, but that's pretty much going to show you how to correctly tear down. I have no interest in saving any of the parts. Actually, there's a couple parts that have some value that I'll throw in the used bin. But for the most part, I'm pretty sure most of this motor is going to be scrap. So let's get right to it. Only 3 tools are needed: a hammer, a crowbar, and an impact. Not the normal tools for a normal rebuild. We're going to start with the top end of the motor. It's pretty much all exposed, kind of ready to take off. A couple of hoses, a valve cover, some of the screws are already loose because my technician already did an inspection here. Do I need to save this? Nah, it's all going in scrap. There's a valve cover. Ooh, the first telltale. Shouldn't have grinding inside the valve cover. Interesting. Cam chain's not on the sprocket right there, and it's pretty well locked up. I might need one more tool to take this apart. I might need a grinder of all things. So we'll see how that goes. This is not normally where it goes. Something jumped on the timing system. Very, very unusual. I've had a lot of these motors apart over the years. I have customers with GTS motors that are nearly 100,000 miles, 160,000 kilometers, and they still have the original timing components. So something pretty unusual has occurred with this motor. Can I still get it apart? Not looking so promising. It's a decompression system. I still get it apart. Oh, it's starting to come apart. Well, that's pretty chewed up. It's the counterweight for the decompression. That was a spring that holds back this movable counterweight. That's trash. And the counterweight itself, you see all sorts of nicking. So the motor was probably turning over at pretty high speed when it failed. Sprocket looks pretty good, but those never fail. And more bits of the spring right here. So something killed this top end. I see the cam chain tensioner in there. The screws for the cam chain tunnel. Nice long screws. This is the tensioner itself. They put a little rubber cap on it, and the reason being is it just isolates some of the noise that would come from the timing system and the timing chain by putting rubber over the cam chain tensioner. This is a new style tensioner that they use on these HPEs. Works a little bit different. I guess it's more durable compared to the old one. Actually looks in pretty good shape. Maybe I'll start hoarding parts at this point, because that's a newer updated part. It actually is retrofittable to the older motors. While I'm at it, let me zip the cam out. Kind of a little more stable on the head. So they use this little plate here, if I can even get it out, that kind of traps the whole cam. Looks okay. That's like kind of the thrust plate for the camshaft itself. The cam probably isn't at top dead center. Kind of curious if it's got bent valves. I would assume it does. Ooh, yeah, I can't even turn this. But maybe I'll be able to push the pivot pins out for the cam. I don't know if I can get this apart. Oh, there we go, get the pivot pins. Normally you set it top dead center, then you're able to get the pivot pins out. But this one is got some stubbornness going here. Maybe I can loosen the tappets. Not how you do a valve adjustment. That one's got a little tension on it. Oh, rocker looks good. They got these nice roller rockers. Roller feels good. The pivot pin looks really nice. So a little bit about the story of this scooter. It's a customer in town. This scooter's had a pretty hard life. It's a 2021 Vespa GTS Racing 60s. It was used quite a bit. Just to give you any indication of the condition of the scooter, it's on its third front fork. So normally the fork lasts the life of the scooter, but if you're crashing it into cars, curbs and such, sometimes the fork may bend. So along with that, I think this motor's had a pretty hard life. So it's just ridden really hard. I think it's broken belts and such. So it just had a really hard life for the little over 2 years I was on the road. Well, fortunately, it's on its third fork and now second motor. We put a brand new replacement GTS HPE motor. Kind of once my tech did the findings and sees a timing system that looks like this, you know there's going to be a lot more carnage in the system. And I think the coolant was mixed in places it wasn't supposed to. And I just pulled the cam out. Looks pretty good. I don't see that much scoring. A couple parts to save. Looks like it's usable. But I see the very first telltale of something drastic that happened with this motor. So look right down the center of the head. There's supposed to be a freeze plug in there. So the cam and rockers look pretty good. I can tell you the coolant oil mixed, and usually that will sometimes damage these components because they have a lot of bearing surfaces, metal to metal. And they rely on just oil, not coolant, because coolant's not a very good lubricant. But I can tell you the first telltale. So I have the cam out, and there's something drastically missing. So right in the center right here is supposed to be a freeze plug. I've covered this freeze plug in the past. If you allow your coolant to completely degrade and rust, sometimes it will rust right through that coolant freeze plug. I generally never see them pop out. The reason they could pop out is if it was severely overheated, the engine was frozen to a level where the coolant or water in the engine is brought to a temperature where it turns into a solid and not a liquid. It will pop those freeze plugs out. And that's typically the only modes of failure of a freeze plug. But this one's completely gone. So I suspect it ejected it. Somehow it went through the cam, didn't damage the cam or the rockers, but it sure took the timing chain out. So let's go further. Let's get the head off. So let's go ahead and zip the head off. Ironically, they went to 11 millimeter for the heads of these bolts. And normally you'd crack them pretty evenly. So I saw the head kind of pop off. Looking okay so far. Be civilized. I could just cut these hoses. I want to be nice and quick about it. And before I even pull the head off, I'm going to show you a couple other telltales that's been overheated. So first of all, this was not expected at all. The spigot shouldn't pull out of the head. If the head was severely overheated, there's a possibility for that to pull out. I barely even pulled on it. It pulled right out. Another telltale, it does have coolant in there still. I think the text might add it. If the plastic plug of the temperature sensor just spins in the brass body. That's usually an indication that it was overheated as well. So let's pull the head off. I certainly wouldn't trust this head knowing that it overheated, but I'm going to do a quick little test. I'm going to actually fill these pockets with water. I could see that these exhaust valves made contact with the piston, and I can visually see that this valve is bent. Even though there's no cam in there, water is probably just going to leak out. So you can do a quick test of a cylinder head with the valves in it with just water. And the intake valves, they look okay right there, but if you pour water right in and it pours right through a closed valve, you know it's either likely bent or it's got a damaged valve seat. And it could have a damaged valve seat just from overheating. Same with exhaust, and I know that's definitely bent. So you know where this head goes? In the scrap bin. So let's take a look at the head gasket. Definitely no indication that it blew. You see all the black coating on this metal laminated gasket. When you see the black coating blown away, could be a loose head bolt or a twisted up head. And you'll see where the combustion gas will blow into the studs or into the coolant. But actually the gasket looks to be in good shape removing. It's just kind of some forensic science that you do as a mechanic when you tear something down. But I don't think the head gasket failed, or there was nothing that led up to a head gasket failing that caused this motor to severely overheat. So we got the cam chain guide. Looked like the dog chewed on it, and it melted a little bit here. So that's in pretty bad shape. So let's get the cylinder off. I'm gonna loosen the hose. Probably gonna have a little bit more water come puddling out. And I could definitely see the valve contact on those, the piston right there. This is not normally how you care for this, but I'm not saving any of these parts. I just want to tap it back to get all these little O-rings out. If I had diagonal pliers, I'd probably just cut them. But it's pretty difficult to get the head off unless all these O-rings that are on the studs are removed. And sometimes they just stick to the studs if you pull the cylinder up. That's like a quick way to get them off. Even quicker would be just cut them. I can tell they're pretty hard. And if they're hard, that's kind of evidence that things got a little hotter than they normally should have been. So, you know, especially considering the miles, those usually hold up pretty good for quite a long time. So now we can get the piston off. And I would not trust this piston or cylinder. So I do see some scoring in the cylinder. Usually you can run a flatbed screwdriver if you're catching little grooves. Definitely feel those with a screwdriver. Pretty suspect that this cylinder is trashed. And the way these are sold is you just buy the piston that's already matched to a cylinder. All right, so watch your eyes, go ahead and pull the clip out. Normally you want to be nice and ginger when you're knocking this out. Separate the piston. You see some real minor scoring. Actually doesn't look too bad. Could have checked the ringing gap. Nothing's broken on the piston. But you can see the 4 little dingers where the valves made contact to this piston. Can I turn the motor over? Not really. The actual big end feels pretty good. One thing that was already removed was the thermostat. I think the thermostat was inspected and melted. A nice part from the 2020 and later GTS is the new aluminum thermostat housing. That's actually retrofittable to the older models. We do sell that on the Scooter West web store as a replacement part, along with a CNC anodized one. It holds up a lot better than the plastic version that was found on the earlier generations. Something they improved upon. I'm gonna be a hoarder myself and say that part. Hold on. All right, so I think at this point I want to split the motor. Probably want to separate the whole transmission. I'll get the water pump out of here, get the starter off. Sometimes we run out of stock on starters. Usually they last quite a long time. Seems like a decent enough used part to save. All right, so let's start getting this alternator, flywheel cover, water pump combination off. Got a little bit of juice in there. The impeller is still intact. Houston, we have a problem. The impeller actually doesn't even turn with the engine. It shouldn't turn freely. It should be connected to the crankshaft. I don't know when that failed, but it certainly failed. You can see some oil has been in there. It doesn't feel like a joystick. I've rebuilt those water pumps before, and sometimes they feel like a joystick. Nice hose clamp, maybe save that. I don't know about this. And at this point, we'll zip all the screws off the cover here. I'm kind of too gun shy to even save the water pump because we'll see what kind of carnage we find behind this water pump and why it's not engaged with the engine. So got some nice hardware. I got plenty of this in my shop. Got the oil pressure sensor that comes off, the stator. I don't care about this motor that much. I'll just get in there with a screwdriver, do exactly what you're not supposed to do as a mechanic. And get a bigger tool for the job. Normally you take such ginger care when prying these machine pieces apart. Ooh, there's chunks falling out. I got carnage. There is chunks falling out. So what's going on in here? So this is the sprag that engages between the water pump and the actual center of this flywheel right here. And it's just missing a tooth. Was this the first part to fail and cause the motor overheat? I don't know. Very unusual failure. That stator looks so nice. I might have to save that. Probably don't need it. They're pretty inexpensive to replace and they're pretty reliable. But you can see that there's some chewed up metal, so that piece was getting churned around inside this, and you can see some of the scum that's built up inside the motor already. Probably don't want to say the water pump, but that stator, I'll pull that off. Nothing was really churning around inside the flywheel. It looks pretty nice. At this point, I can turn the motor over. I don't know if I trust that crankshaft though. All right, so let's zip this flywheel off. 24mm socket. This thing's a little chewed up in the trash. And normally you use a puller to get this off. I don't really care about the crankshaft. I don't trust it. Let's see if we can just give it a shock wave and release it from the taper. Man, it does not want to come off. I might have to get the factory tool to actually get this off. The beating in the pry bar wasn't going to help me out with this flywheel. I have to get the correct tool, and I'm going to mistreat the correct tool by using an electric impact on it. Always the best way to treat these fine Italian factory tools here. There we go. This gear never goes out, kind of lasts the life of the motor. Don't need that. There's something that's worth saving is this sprag. So this is still in good shape. The flywheel looks visually pretty nice. I think I'll keep it with the stator. Maybe somebody needs a used part at some point. So normally you'd use some nice tools, dismantle the transmission shaft. Looks like my tech already had the belt cover off. Let's just see if it will come right off. Man, I didn't need to use my pry bar. Looks pretty good inside. The bearing's still pretty nice. Belt cover looks pretty nice. Unfortunately, they're not the nice old style belt covers that are powder coated. It's covered by a plastic cover, so there's not much need for this part on the used market. In the bin. Take the center pulley off. It's got a little bit of a groove, mostly up there from, kind of gives you an indication this scooter's mostly used at higher speeds, since there's like a little bit of a groove that I can feel in that pulley. Man, the drive belt looks pretty fresh. Clutch even has some life in it. Great spare drive belt for somebody. I don't think so, just goes in the bin. This is still in good shape. It can be used on the older models. The bearings feel good. I'll be a nice guy, I'll keep that part. The variator is pretty similar. There's a little bit of a groove in there. The roller's got some flat spots on it. Maybe it was due for a service soon. You can see some nice scoring in there. Probably still serviceable and usable, but guide pin right there. And then you got the infamous seal right here. Technically, you need the special tool to get that apart. I'm not gonna even go that far. You got the idler pulley, still looks pretty good. Got a center bearing. This is something eventually you do replace. All right, so let's get this oil pan off and see how things look under here. Get our 8mm. Ooh. What do we got draining out of the oil? This is an oil pan. It's not a coolant pan. Have you ever wanted to check your coolant level in your oil pan? Well, this motor has given us the opportunity to check the coolant level. I think originally it was a big milkshake mess, but the technician put some more coolant in it maybe, and that's why it's so nice looking, because normally the coolant looks like, I usually call it the milkshake. And there we go. Now we got some oils coming out. I have like 1 million of these oil pans here, mainly because everybody replaced them with the ones with the sight glass. So I have a surplus of them. They're always going into scrap because I have so many of them. This is your oil pressure relief valve. Still looks pretty good, but not really needed. This is my favorite part when you have a blowing up motor. You run your finger in the oil pan and look at that forbidden glitter right there. That is just beautiful. Shouldn't be there. You shouldn't have coolant, and you shouldn't have the metal forbidden glitter in your motor. But unfortunately, this motor has a mix of both coolant, oil, and forbidden glitter in there. You can go a little further. I want to see if the oil pump drive chain's broken. Ooh, I see something special in there that I haven't seen before. So that's a baffle right there. The oil pump chain actually is still intact. This is something I've never seen. This is actually one of the links for the cam chain, but I can't pull the cam chain out. So something broke in there. Actually, I'm getting the cam to even turn over right now. That's pretty good, but it feels pretty good. The crankshaft feels good, but I would never ever trust this crankshaft here. So I think there's one part of this motor that is salvageable for somebody. Every once in a while, higher miles, sometimes you'll see a bearing fail in the gearbox and it may damage the gears. I've seen the axle shaft get damaged from improper wheel installation and more. So some of those parts have some good used value to it. So I think the oil's still in the gearbox. So I'm gonna go ahead and zip the gearbox cover off. And be prepared for some 80-90 to drip out. Some nice 8mm bolts there. And time to get the hammer out. And I got my oil containment pan right under there. There we go, got some nice oils dripping out. Not much in these gearboxes. Maybe there is a bit of oil. But all these gears look pretty nice. But the bearings in the engine case probably aren't really usable, but they're pretty inexpensive if they need to be replaced. There's the shaft. So maybe I'll clean these parts up, and those are some good used salvageable parts there. All right, so I got my safety squints on, and we're gonna have to get the center stand out. Still got springs on there, so you gotta be careful. Got some tension on it. Plus I got an oil pan with a bunch of different types of fluids from the motor, along with metal flakes. And I kind of wanted to contain my mess a little bit, so I did put a diaper down. See if we can get the center stand out. Check out the grindage on this center stand. It's pretty nice. These center stands are pretty inexpensive. Probably not worth saving this one. And I'll show you the perfect way to treat a screwdriver. Not. But it's Snap-on. Just call the Snap-on guy, buy enough tools from him. He just give me a new one. Look how rusty this pivot pin is. Definitely been ridden in the weather. Tip the motor up a little bit. There we go. Quite a rusty bolt. Safety squints on. We got springs under tension. See what happens. Pretty uneventful. This was a nice stand. It did serve the scooter's 2.5-year life pretty well. In the bin. Same with the springs, they're pretty inexpensive. Let's see if we can even get the pivot pin out. In my recent BV400 service video, I showed you how this pivot pin definitely sometimes doesn't come with enough grease out from the factory. And you can see that's the case even with this one. There's definitely little or no grease on this pivot pin. The center stand works so good once you get grease on this, but the motor's a donezo, so who cares? All right, now we're gonna flip the motor over. It's getting nice and light because all we got is the weight of the cases and the crankshaft. And I got my containment diaper. The final chapter in dismantling a motor. Let's split the cases. So there's a whole bunch of 8mm fasteners here. And the last fastener. Look at those beautiful 6mm bolts. Give it the look. They're looking good. That's why they give you these nice little tabs. Safe place to hit and separate the motor. You can see there's so much metal in here. When you get a motor that's spread metal everywhere, usually they're pretty hard to clean out unless you put it in a jet wash. This engine case may be good, but just not worth the hassle of saving it or rebuilding it. So sadly, in the scrap bin. Just to give you any indication of what was going on in this motor, let's pull the oil screen out. So it goes into this plastic socket here. Normally you access the oil through that oil drain plug, but look at that metal. And it's all built up in there. It's kind of been washed through. It's a little bit of a milkshake kind of look to it. You can see the kind of oil and coolant kind of mixed to it. So I think I found where the missing link was. So earlier I showed you that missing link from the cam chain. Well, there's one that's tipped over there. There's one right there. This one's jammed up into a cool looking delta. Definitely something broke or jammed up right there. I could probably just break the chain. Man, that thing is pretty tough. But we'll leave it to be. It's definitely not going back together. There's one last thing I want to show you. So when the technicians tried to save this motor by putting more oil and coolant in it, they thought we could just give it a little bit more life. So we got a baby Jesus right here. And it did not help, unfortunately. I'm sorry. So a little tip is they have multiple categories for the clearance of the journals on these crankshafts. So this one's stamped with a 1. So if you're looking for that, it's either engraved into the crank web surface or it's a stamping on the edge. Now we're going to flip the motor over. We're going to get a little medieval on the timing cover seal and just look at that chain just ever so slightly more. And then we're going to put this motor to its final resting place, which would be the scrap metal bin. So it'll be turned into a new motor somewhere. So we're going to use some unconventional tools to extract this timing cover. Normally I'd walk across the shop and get the factory tool. This is one part on these motors that kind of requires a special tool. I'm going to improvise. I'm going to try with a slide hammer and see what happens. That thing is in there. All right, since idea 1 failed, go ahead and pull the cam out. We'll revisit that. I'll take a look at it. It's definitely going in the scrap metal bin. We got lots of good juice right there. And then we're just gonna rest this on the side. Typically you do it on some wooden blocks. Well, the cool thing is I could see that seal from this side. And guess what? I got some bigger tools. So we'll send a punch there and it should pop that seal out. I'm gonna get this seal out one way or another. You can see it under there a little bit. I can see the oil pump chain under that baffle, but I can see the seal right there. So I think a big enough hammer and a big enough punch will do the trick. All right, got the punch in there. Wow, that seal is in there. Change in tone. And I think we have successfully ejected a seal. So let's see what kind of carnage or lack of carnage that we have under here. So there's that seal. Normally you use the factory tool. The seal is not really reusable once you remove it. Definitely after you remove it with a punch. We did save the little sprocket for the cam gear. Looks still pretty good actually. And we have the sprocket for the oil pump drive gear. Looks pretty good as well. And then this sad state of affair for this cam chain. It's got the broken link and the delta in it. These chains are pretty cool to kick around and look at. Had enough of that. And we got the oil pump in there. All right, so might as well remove the oil pump. Wow, look at that. That's pretty cool. I've never tried that. There you go. So the little oil pump cam chain, that's pretty cool. You know, some cars, they actually use a drive belt, a rubber drive belt in the oil bath. I learned that actually from I Do Cars, watching all the different various car engine rebuilds. I'm definitely trying to build a lot of new stuff to a price point, and sometimes it shows. These I've never ever seen a problem with them. In the bin. And this is where your little cartridge of an oil pump's located. And I'm sure it ate a little bit of metal after seeing what was in the oil screen. The oil screen kind of stops it, but usually these oil pumps, they last the life of the engine. But if they've ingested metal from an explosion somewhere within the motor, they're probably compromised and not worth using again. See if we can remove this with the proper factory tool. It's looking like I got it loose. And there's an oil pump. It's got a nice little MLS gasket right there. Have you ever taken an oil pump apart? Just like the oil pump dry chain, the oil pump itself has got some cool inner workings on it. So let's see if I stab myself with an electric impact and a screwdriver. These screws are rather tight. There we go. Not too bad, but wasn't going to do it with the hand tool. So you have this little plate, pops off, and you got this little rotor, almost like a little rotary engine. And it's going to be hard to capture in the camera. I can feel some binding in this oil pump. That's small metal contamination in the oil pump. And I can see some real minor scoring on the insides of the surface of the centered metal stator and the rotor. So definitely not reusing this oil pump. But it's pretty fun to take apart. All right, so let's take a look at this crankshaft. So from first inspection, it looks pretty good. This feels really smooth. There's no noticeable free play. A little bit of scoring in the bushing right there. But I can tell you one thing, it's been compromised with coolant, which isn't a very good. So I can tell you one thing, the crankshaft's been compromised by coolant that was in the engine oil, and it's been pumped through the bearings of this crankshaft. So who knows how much life is left in this crankshaft. And then plus I kind of give his final Signora by wailing on the threads, something you normally would never do if you're dismantling this motor. So onto the scrap bin. All right, well, like I said, the engine case probably could be saved, but with all that metal that's gone through it, I think it's going to say its last goodbye. So I hope you enjoyed this teardown of a video, kind of some forensic investigation on a 2021 Vespa GTS 300 motor that's failed rather catastrophically. I suggest you go into the comments and give your ideas of why it failed. I think it definitely overheated and things just started going downhill from there, and it probably was being operated at pretty high speed as things just started failing one after another. All right, so I'm gonna do a little bonus round here on this video. I just gotta make it a little bit longer. I know you've been watching for a while. I wanna weigh the parts I'm scrapping versus the parts I'm keeping. So is it 30%, 60%? Or 30-70? Is it 25-75? What do you think it is? Just give it some thought and get the scale out. But if you like videos like this and you're just curious about engines in general, you know, gasoline, diesel engines, all that sort of stuff, I suggest checking out the YouTube channel, I Do Cars. This is where I got the idea to copy his style of video for a Vespa motor. All right, so we have the infamous scale here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. Number one, this isn't the scale that measures your packages before they go out. But for some reason, the people that package your packages use this scale for something special. So first of all, I gotta get a chair weight because I'm gonna be holding these things. So what do you think I weigh? Sorry, it's in pounds. 163. No, 146.3. So let's try it with this. So let's see if I can lift this and hold this at the same time. And you can just count the trash can probably is 2 or 3 pounds, but I'm not too concerned about this. So let's see. 203. All right, the bucket of parts I'm saving. 178. So I did some high school level mathematics on the back of a napkin, actually Western Power Sport order form. I did a little calculation. So I subtracted my tare weight, and the total of these two is about just under 90 pounds. So that's pretty much what a GTS motor weighs. Obviously a little bit more with fluids and a couple other items that are bolted to, like air boxes and such. And I did a little ratios here. So the good old ratios. So I weighed the trash can coming in about 57 pounds and the bin of parts I'm saving at 32 pounds. So we got a ratio of 64% that I'm disposing of and recycling to 36% that I'm saving. So I hope that helps you out in what you've been inquiring about all along during this whole entire video. Thanks for watching. This is Robot here from Vespa Motorsport and ScooterWest.com. I'll see you on the next one.